Welcome back to Tiny Grimes Games, and I'm here today to talk to you about starting up a local meta. And just so you know, this is a multi-part series, so if you like what you're seeing, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. A caveat before we start, I've set up a bunch of local metas, and so a lot of this material is drawn from my own personal experiences, mostly associated with FFG games. I've helped set up a Game of Thrones meta, a Star Wars meta game, and for a little while, Dice Masters. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. First thing that you need to do to set up a local meta is to take responsibility. I know for myself, this meant a complete reorientation in the way I was thinking about this. So when I started playing Game of Thrones, I was really frustrated with FFG. How could they not have a play group in Los Angeles that met regularly in such a giant metropolitan? This to me meant that they just weren't that interested and they weren't really taking any initiative in this. As I started thinking about this more, I realized that kind of makes sense. This is a small company. They don't really have the resources or probably the know-how to go into different areas of the country and try to help set up metas. They make a game, right? This isn't magic. You can't have this expectation that you're just going to walk into a shop and boom, that there'll be a burgeoning meta there. Maybe you'll get lucky, but probably not. So the first step is to really take responsibility yourself and say, I want a meta, I'm going to make a meta. All right. Number two. It's really a lot of work, and it's pretty thankless. Once you get it going, it's not like people walk up to you regularly and go, hey, thanks so much for setting this all up. No one knows who set this up. It doesn't really matter. They now have someone to play with. There's a place to play. So basically, you need to be aware going in, this is going to take a lot of work. If you're the kind of person who knows that you're going to kind of give up as soon as you hit a rough spot, that's fine. But try to have someone else do this. Try to have someone else set up a meta because there's going to be a lot of setbacks. You'll finally get something going, and then a new game will come out, and a couple of people start playing that game, and they won't play the game that you're playing anymore. And that's just going to happen. You're going to have setbacks, and it's going to be tough, and it's going to be an uphill road. But once you finally do have a meta, it's a lot of fun, and it is worth it. All right, number three. And now we're starting to get into the actual helpful tips, not just sort of generalities. But you really need to find a supportive venue. And what I mean by that is a place that is happy to have you there and helps you and gives you support. I'll use some personal experience here. When we started with our Game of Thrones meta, we chose a venue that was local and was convenient. And it worked okay, right? We had a couple people that started coming, but they didn't support us. They weren't rude to us. They were actually quite friendly. It was a little comic shop. They had a very small play area, and they allowed us to play there. But it wasn't a give and take relationship. They refused to stock the game, so they never really made any money off of the game, and so they were just kind of letting us take up space in their store. So what you really need to try to do is find a place that's happy to have you there, that's excited to have you there because they're making money. They're helping their own store. And so we basically sacrificed our ease, our convenience to find a store that was about an hour away that stocked the game, that was happy to have us there every week, that was willing to say when someone came in to buy the game, oh yeah, there's a local group that plays here. They meet every Wednesday. Come on by. They were willing to put up signs for us to advertise their game. They were willing to buy the league kits to help give us prize support for various tournaments, and they were willing to host tournaments. And so it becomes a synergistic relationship rather than a store allowing you to play there. So if you can do this, this is really one of the critical steps to take is to find a venue or a location that works best for you. Now, if you're in a little area, this can be really hard. I mean, I'm in Los Angeles. There's stores all over the place. But even so, we were willing to choose a location that was an hour away without traffic in Los Angeles. That's a really long drive. So if you're in a little area, you're going to have to be willing to be creative, and you're probably going to have to be willing to accept a fairly long commute to be able to build your meta. So like I said, it's not easy, it's hard work, and this is part of it. Number four, this might be the most difficult and the most frustrating and the hardest part of all of this, and that is being consistent. You have to find a time and a day when you're always there. I mean, always, right? Just every single week you're there. Because what happens is, it starts being known, like, oh, Wednesday night is when those Star Wars guys are here. There's only the two of them, but they're always here. Every single week, they're always here. And so the store knows this. They can tell people, yeah, be here Wednesday. What happens is if you're not there and the store tells people, yeah, they're here every Wednesday, and then someone comes Wednesday and you're not there that week, you lost that potential person. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe they'll come back again, but most likely they're going to say, I tried that store. No, they don't really have anything going. They said they did, but they don't. So you really need to be consistent. And this is where it's going to be frustrating. I mean, there's going to be times when only, let's say there's 2 of you and you're building this meta together and only one of you can go. That's a really boring night. You're going to have to set up like a big spot that makes it really clear that you're playing whatever game it is that you're playing. You have to have the cards sort of spread out, make it look like something fun is happening. It can be very frustrating, but you always, always, always need to be there so people know this is the night. And once you get the ball rolling, this becomes a lot easier because it's much easier to make sure 2 or 3 people are there if there are 6 or 7 or 8 of you in your group. It's just really hard when there's only 2 of you. All right. The 5th suggestion I have is be what I call aggressively friendly. And what I mean by this is if someone walks by and they say like, hey, you don't just get a big smile and go, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. And then turn back and play your game. It's much more than that. You have to go out of your way to take anyone who shows even the faintest interest in what you're doing and engage them, right? And if you're playing Star Wars or the new Game of Thrones that's coming out, this is a lot easier because you can say something like, hey, you like Star Wars? It's a pretty rare person who goes, no, I hate Star Wars. Why do you ask? Right? Usually they're interested. They already saw you're playing with Star Wars cards. They're kind of intrigued. Or Game of Thrones cards, as Game of Thrones is really popular. And this is a chance to sort of bring them in. Hey, do you like Game of Thrones? Why, yes, I do. Oh, then you're going to love this. There's this brand new game. It just started. It's the perfect time to get in. Why don't you sit down next to me and I'll show you how it works. Being really aggressively friendly. I would even go so far as to just kind of walk around the shop when there was let's say there was 3 of us and I wasn't playing. I would just walk around the shop, see what people were doing. If someone was looking at some sort of trading card thing and they didn't really look like they were occupied or fully engaged, I might just start talking to them. Hey, how you doing? And they kind of look at you like, what the heck? Hi, how are you doing? Like, hey, do you like Game of Thrones by any chance? Yeah, I do actually. I don't know if you knew this, but there's actually a card game, and we're playing right over here if you were ever interested in coming on by, seeing how it works. And I'll tell you, about 95 times out of 100, they look at you like you're totally insane, and they don't come over. And that's fine. But at least you're making the effort. You feel like you're doing something, and every now and then, you might score a person out of that. So closely associated with this is always having some sort of beginner deck on hand. And not a beginner deck that you're going to crush your opponent with, right? Like you give them a beginner deck and you're like, here's a beginner deck. I will now take a meta deck and crush you into oblivion. Instead, you want to try to construct some sort of decks that are going to be fun. So with Star Wars, I would have something like a Darth Vader deck versus a Yoda deck. They may not have been the best decks, but that's okay. The goal is to give them that fun experience of like, yeah, I got Darth Vader out and he had Yoda and we were clashing with them. And these kind of really fun elements. And so when you meet these people and you are aggressively friendly with somebody and they say, hey, I guess I'm kind of interested, you can just immediately follow up with, I got a deck. You have any interest in playing? I can kind of walk you through it and try to make it fun. I know Ben in our meta is especially good at giving these really fun demos that just bring people in. And a couple people, he just kind of brought them immediately into the game with one of his high energy demos. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the first of the series of how to build your local meta. Next week I'll come back to you with some more tips. And until then, stay tuned to Tinygrams Games.